going to need you to come back tomorrow for the show. Now, welcome to another episode of Cinema Crusaders, everyone. You all know what time it is. It is Friday afternoon out here in California. It's Friday evening on the East Coast. It's late Friday over there in Europe. It might even be Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. But no matter where you are, you know what time it is. It is time for Cinema Crusaders. And this week, brought to us by Jeff Racy, we are doing another Mike Judge film because the man is an absolutely brilliant comedic satirist. He knows exactly, he has his pulse on what is going on and how to make things relevant and funny at the same time. And I'm sure we're going to get into that because we are talking about Office Space this time from 1999. And I have to tell all of you, in 1999, I was living this movie. This movie is like a horror movie to me. It gave me flashbacks, but it was funny at the same time. And I'm looking forward to talk to it. There's an incredible cast in it. But before we talk about this movie, I need to introduce you to the gentlemen, the fellow Cinema Crusaders who make this podcast possible. They are the yin to my yang, the ones who get out there and give you all of the great information and insight into these movies. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you I don't know, is he a double or triple threat? I can't think. He's a writer. He's an artist. He's a great human being, so he's a triple threat. He is a very, very good artist. You look for his stuff out there on DeviantArt. He has a number of comic books out to include Mr. Happy and Symbols of Liberty. He's working on some stuff with me. An incredibly talented writer as well. I'm talking about none other than Jeff El Fuego Bracy.
El Fuego. I am the fire, am I?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, that's a little better. So, yeah, Office Space. I decided to go with a not the classic thing. Clint Eastwood, so easy to do, but I like finding these kind of lesser known characters, actors. Gary Cole was in the last movie, and he plays a significant role in this movie. I've been a fan of him ever since the TV show American Gothic, and so I just wanted to lean into this guy and give him a little bit more love, more appreciation. He's probably best known for the Brady Bunch movies, but he is just so on fire in this film, and I think that so many people can relate with this because you have the kind of the white collar structure and you've got the blue collar structure, and we see in both sides of this, job sucks. If you're not doing your dream career, your job kind of sucks. And so this film is so relatable across the board, across so many people. And that's another reason why I wanted to pick it. And that's why it's a classic, because we can all get into this flick.
Yeah, I have to say that the movie starts off with one of the worst things in the world that I lived through, which was traffic, and it just goes downhill from there. So, yeah, this is a great movie, but holy... I'm
not in California, but living in a tourist town, summertime, I have still experienced that kind of traffic, and just like, yeah. And I swear to God, I have done the lane change thing, and as soon as I get in the other lane, the other cars take off. Like, what? So I just decided it's my fate to always, apparently, sorry, everybody else in this line, I'm going to be in this line. We're not going to go anywhere because apparently I have that kind of control over reality.
Yep. All right. The next Cinema Crusader I am going to introduce, he is also a writer. He has got a variety of comic books out there. He's also an English teacher, an incredibly talented man who is also the owner of a beagle, which I just thought would be interesting to bring up for all of you. And the beagle's name is Bean, nonetheless. So I'm talking about none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers.
Yeah, it's not that I'm lazy. It's just that I don't care. Well, actually, I did care about this movie. It took me a little while. I will say that aside from the intro sequence with the cars that I just thought was like, yeah, this pretty much describes the traffic experience that I have in the area I'm living in right now. So, yeah, there are certain parts of town where it is kind of like that, especially when you have that bit with the old man and the walker, like right there.
Hey.
So it's like, yeah, it's kind of like that. But yeah, this was a movie that, aside from that, was kind of like slow burn. And it took me a while to get into it. But then when I started actually getting into it, it's like, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, I can totally understand how anybody like living in a corporate environment and, having to do the kill cubicle thing would eventually start getting like PTSD for watching this, because it really does. The one thing that Mike Judge is very good at is he brings a lot of lived experience to the stuff that he does. So, for example, King of the Hill is very realistically Texas.
Yeah.
Like, having lived there, I can tell you that. And he's doing the same thing here, with the whole cubicle business. It feels very Dilbert in certain respects, and and it resonates. And yeah, it's an interesting film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he said this film was based off his actual experience, and King of the Hill is based off of people he knew in Texas. So, like, you're right on, Steve. He brings that lived experience.
And it's not just corporate. As someone who also worked in a restaurant like Bennigan's at one point, the whole flair thing gets me too. So, but we won't go there. So, but
go to Outback, I laugh every time because I think of this movie.
Yeah. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the man who is a filmmaker and a writer. He has comic books and films out there. Not only that, Fabio calls him up for hair advice. Yes, he has the most beautiful hair on the internet. I'm talking about none other than the man behind Warehouse 9 Pro, Lance Lucero.
How you doing? Thank you very much, Fabio.
Yes.
Yeah, he needs work.
Yeah.
He needs work.
Fabio has lost his hair game, but Lance has not. So
No,
Lance is still looking beautiful as ever.
It's going to keep that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Besides his extensive film knowledge that he brings to the show, we bring him on here for the beauty factor. So, Lance,
somebody's got to do it. It's hard to step up.
I know. You're the eye candy. I mean, look at me. No one's coming in here to look at me. So
yeah, you got the bigger tone. It's all good.
All right.
It's the mustache.
Yeah. Office Space. There are a lot of ways to go in this movie, and there's a lot of cast. So we're going to have to kind of watch our time. But the first thing that I wanted to ask all of you, and this is a general question, I'm going to go around the horn, is that this cast is incredibly prolific. They have been in any number of movies and cartoons, from voice acting to actual dramatic acting. But most of them are comedic actors. And what I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to go to Jeff first to go around the horn, is why is it that so many comedic actors can transition over into other genres and do well in them? I'm thinking like Tom Hanks started as a comedic actor. Bruce Willis started as a comedic actor for the most part. Just a whole host of them. Stephen Root and McGinley in here,
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
The list goes on. Rodney Dangerfield.
What is it about them that they can bring the emotion and the drama and even horror as well, versus trying to go the other way? If you don't have the comedic timing, it just doesn't happen most of the time. I'm going to go Jeff first. What do you think on that?
Well, for me, I think it's simple. I've actually been I've done comedic acting. I've done stand up. I've done improv groups, and I think the people who have that particular talent is the thing that transcends is the fact that comedy is a mixture of truth and pain. So they know how to dig into that. And when you're doing comedy, you make fun of it. But when you want to be dramatic, you dip into it. You draw from that in a different sort of way. You stop making fun of it and you start being very real about it. And I think that's what I see when I see actors who start as comedians or comedic actors, and they get into drama and even horror. I just see them just pull these things out because it takes. I mean, all actors have great observational skills, but there's something interesting about the comedian, the way their psyche works.
Interesting.
And sometimes they can just go a little deeper, that they have this particular sort of flexibility.
I've had this conversation with Macabre Mike before about writing, and I think it's very similar, which brings me to Steve. What would you add to that, especially with writing the comedy versus the drama? I mean, look at Shakespeare. He was good at comedy, but he could definitely write the drama as well. So,
yeah, very, very true. I remember that Joss Whedon had addressed this question at one point when talking about, I want to say, Buffy. That he kind of preferred getting people who had experienced comedy and were very good with comedy because that was hardest. It was the hardest to pull off. And if you can pull off the comedy, you can usually make the rest of it work. And I think some of it is timing, just being able to have that innate sense of comic timing, and you can't fake it. And if you got it, you got it. And if you don't, you don't. I think that may be a part of it as well. I do agree with generally what Jeff has said about it. Yeah, it's just one of those things where you have actors that are versatile, but if you've got somebody who is who has that timing and who has the rhythm and who knows how to tap into things of pain and being able to turn it into a laugh, that allows you to kind of go into these very deep well that you can tap into for other things. I mean, and here's the thing, like even comedians that I generally don't enjoy most of the time, like Adam Sandler, can come around and deliver a damn good dramatic performance.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can respect people who could do that.
what about you, Lance? I mean, have you ever dipped your toe into directing any comedy? And what is your insight into, is it true that those who can do comedy seem to be able to easier transition to something else? So,
well, it's very hard to make people laugh. It really isn't that easy, especially nowadays. But there is a way to achieve it, and I think it's that observational power. It's the power to perform, especially when you're trying to go for the joke, and that's presentation is part of it, timing, delivery, that's all part of it. As far as acting goes, I think that the best comedians that play it not for the laugh will get the laugh. And it's like, if it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge, people can pick up on that. That delivery is extremely important, and it's not easy to do. I write down a joke. There are times where I'd run it by 10 different people. Like, hey, did that joke fly? And if people are laughing, I'm thinking, okay, I can integrate it into the comic book. I can integrate it into the film. That should fly, that joke. It's hit or miss, but usually the bigger laugh is there. It's not easy to do. It's a fun challenge. And as far as performers go, it's a double-edged sword. You do look at a person like Robin Williams, whose fan base started in comedy. Then he started to lean into drama. Of course, he's classically trained for that, but people look at him for the laugh. It's an adjustment, but he's one of the rare ones that can do it. And you look at a movie like Office Space, I mean, it's like the perfect musical composition. You take away the strings, it's not going to work. You take away one of the performers in this movie, it's not going to work. Everybody had a place there. And even when it was straight, like Gary Cole, Lumbergh, he's not playing it for laughs. The only time I think he plays it for a laugh is in Peter Gibbons' nightmare when he's imagining him having sex with his girlfriend. I think that is the nudge, nudge, wink, wink part of the character, but his emotion is pretty solid throughout the film, and it wins. He's not playing it for laughs. So I think that's the mark of it.
I'll push back on that a little bit in saying that a good comedic actor knows when to play it straight to get the laugh. Because sometimes the playing it strictly by the book is the thing that gets you to laugh the most, along with, so being the straight man in a comedy like this is a skill unto itself as well. So.
Absolutely. And he's like the anchor of this movie, if you ask me. Without Lumbergh, this movie wouldn't make it. And you look, it was a good pick by Jeff, because you look at his career. I mean, you look at a Brady Bunch. That's tongue in cheek. You're looking for the laugh. And then you look at an Office Space, his performance in this, it's completely different. He's just completely different. He knows how to scale it back, and it works. And then you look at a movie like A Simple Plan, where he is a cold, hardcore person that doesn't have to say much. I mean, as far as a performer goes, he can do comedy, he can do drama, He can do, I mean, boom, he's a double-edged sword, which is great. But it's a difficult thing to do. And I always question when I have to perform that because I like to lean towards a comedic side. I believe that life isn't that serious. I mean, you look at a Christopher Nolan movie, you know, I mean, some of them are just so over the top, dramatic, serious. It's like life isn't that way. He's a dry writer. He's good. He knows what he's doing to propel a story forward. But there are times where I do think most of his characters lose life because people should not just be dictating lines. There's character there, and humor is everywhere. In the darkest, deepest corner of the planet, somebody's cracking a joke, and that's what you got to love about humanity. Humanity will go there, inappropriate, appropriate, and they will go for the jokes. There's always that one person that'll do it.
But that is a perfect segue into what I wanted, the next topic. And we're going to do cast last because there's so much to talk about there that we're going to be going on that right till the end. But I think another part of comedy that is so hard for many people and is you have to have a lack of humility to a certain extent because you have to be willing to completely bare yourself and jump in both feet, and it may or may not land. You may get absolutely crushed. You know, you may make a movie that you think is the funniest thing in the world. You may write something you think is funny, and you'll get crickets. You know, and that is going to crush you. You know, so you can't go halfway with comedy because no one will laugh then. You know, it was what you're talking about, the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So
yeah,
right, and it's like one of those performers that I think is a duality of that is Chevy Chase. I mean, there are times where man, comedically he's brilliant. And then there's that look at the screen, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But he seems to be able to pull it off. He's like the rare example I can think of doing both perfectly.
I think the reason he can pull it off is because he's got such an impish look in his face that we're all putting our worst thoughts on him. You know, so we're like, we know what you're thinking in your head. He may or may not be thinking it, but we think he's thinking it. So, you know, we think it's hilarious. All right. So I wanted to talk about the movie now, you know, so talk about comedy. I got that out. I want to talk about what this movie means to each of us, because I think it brings out different things for everybody. And I think this, you know, the basic story is a guy hates his job. He's working the 9-to-5 traffic, soul crushing corporate software job. He was living my life in 1999. It was sucking the soul out of him. And in the middle of getting hypnotism to help him deal with this job, the hypnotist dies of a cardiac arrest, and he's stuck in not giving a shit. And that frees him up to be just amazing, you know, to do whatever the hell he wants and to glide through this corporate structure. And somehow they can't deal with that because he's no longer afraid. And I will say right now, there's a lot to talk about with corporations. But when I first saw this movie, I was still working in corporate America. I will tell you right now, I would like to thank my judge because it made me realize that one of the ways that the bosses kept me under control was fear of losing my job, fear of saying no, fear of doing this. Suddenly I was like, yeah, I'll come in on Saturday and Sunday. I want a raise, you know? And they're like, yeah, if I, you know, give me a raise, I'm that important, I'll go somewhere else. It was like, suddenly you get a raise, you know? So it was one of those things. It was that observational skill. You know, I didn't go full Peter in this movie because then I'd get arrested, but it did help. And, you know, and it was the same thing with, I will say that I was severe on the road sometimes. I was working myself towards coronary because I'm like banging on the road, you know? So I was like, you know what? I got to tone it back. Otherwise the shop's going to kill me. So it's interesting how a funny little movie like this made such a difference in my life. And I identified with it so much. And it was amazing. I think that's one of Mike Judge's great talents. And this cast brought it to life beautifully. I even knew a guy at work like Milton. I mean, he wasn't exactly like Milton, but he got fired in layoff, and that dude went mental. He was throwing computers off the second floor and everything. He went nuts. So it was a really good snapshot, and I think it takes a brilliant observational comedy mind and writer to be able to write something like that. And I think Mike Judge is brilliant. I mean, he's written King of the Hill, Beavis and Butthead, Idiocracy, this. the list goes on and on. So, I mean, that's what I have to say about the movie. But I want to go around the horn and hear what you guys have to say before we break down this cast. So, Jeff, I'm going to go to you first again, because the first was just my general question. So I want to hit you up here. So,
what's going to be the general question, or?
well, what are your thoughts on the movie? You know, so
I think I kind of covered that in my opening a little bit, but
yeah,
the fact that it's just so doggone relatable, and you know, like Steve said, because the lived experience that Mike is bringing to it, like he didn't just write this film, he didn't just produce the film, he also directed the film, so he knew exactly what he wanted to get out of this. And one thing I was very impressed by, when you're used to seeing a guy who directs animation, you don't necessarily know how he's going to direct live action. I would say that some of the issues we've seen with some recent Star Wars stuff is in how Dave Filoni, who is primarily an animator, sometimes he's handling live action stuff a little kind of wonky, because he's used to handling stuff, even though it's 3D animation, the animation process is still very different than, you know, organizing things on a live set. And so I've noticed there's some peculiarities to how some of his Disney Star Wars shows have gone because of the disconnect there between the two mediums. But Mike, he really knows how to pick his shots, and I love his homages. Like when they do the heist, the scheme, and you know, he understood exactly what he wanted to get out of that. The proper use of slow-mo, the really creative camera angles. One of my favorite shots of the shot above Samir and the other fellow as they rotate in their chairs to pass each other the disc. It really cool stuff. You know, there's some Tarantino in there. There's some other stuff in there. You know, he's clearly been influenced by. But I was really impressed by this guy's shot selection on this, and you know, he knows when to give you a broader frame. He knows when to bring it in close to give you the emotional impact, and that's very impressive, considering that was this his first film?
Yes.
no,
Okay, so
okay,
His first feature film, yes.
this is his first feature film, and I don't know if he did any shorts beforehand. You know, seeing his later live action features afterwards, I've enjoyed all of those, but it just really impressed me. And having been in these sorts of jobs, he seems to have really understood how to also frame the image, how to frame the shots there to give us the most soul crushing feelings about everything. The opening scene with the traffic alone is just like just a soul killer right there. Like anybody who's been in even a semi-urban environment and you've had to deal with that traffic, and the observational awareness to have like the white guy who's enjoying gangster rap turning down his radio and locking the door when the black guy comes walking by.
it's
just so
interesting.
good.
Mike
What's
Judge did an Office Space short, animation short, that focused on Milton in 1992. So
Okay, I did see it was based off of that, but like it's such a jump. It's such a dramatic jump, and he handles it brilliantly. I would love to have been on the set and see how he directed people in this kind of experience versus like being in a sound booth and asking like, okay, you know, give me the line like this, give me the line like that, you know. But it just, everything in this movie pays off. He's clearly got just looking at things, it looks like it was a wonderful set to work on. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. I think a lot of this probably goes into the thing Lance harps on time and time again, preparation. This feels like he was very prepared. He didn't go into his first feature half-assed at all.
all right, I'm going to skip.
I think
go ahead.
he wanted to achieve.
I'm going to skip to Lance next, and then I'll come to you, Steve, because Jeff just brought up something really interesting that I wanted to ask you. He was talking about telling the actors, I need you to say it like this, you need you to say it like that. Do you think he did that? Do you think that's effective? Or do you give the actors as much information about what you intended when you write and then let them interpret it?
I believe that he handed the material over and let the comedians do their work. Because if you look at the Blu-ray we were watching, at the end has a little bit of outtakes.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember that.
And I think they played, and of course whatever worked best probably stuck. I think that's an important thing to let these kind of talented performers do. You let them embody the character and let them go for it. I can probably see maybe there was a little extra direction for Gary Cole to have him keep it toned down. You know what I mean? Because it would be very easy to go over the top.
There are two other characters I think there was a little extra direction, and I will say it's the two consultants. Having lived through that as well, where a consultant team comes in and they are trying to be your buddy while they're figuring out whether or not they're going to can your ass.
Yeah, and the Bob line, Jameer, not going to work here anymore. I mean, he ad-libbed that. That wasn't written, So once again, you let the actors breathe to an extent. To an extent, you gotta, it's got to serve the purpose. But overall, I mean, this movie's it's like a documentary, but yet, documentaries are designed to really pull the heartstrings, really make a point, really create an emotional reaction. Whereas this, I think, was it's satire completely, but yet it hurts more because of the relevancy of it, because how people can relate to it. Everybody can relate to this movie. Everybody. I've been in the corporate world, the government world, the contract world, everything. I mean, our family company was building modular furniture. So in the 90s, I was building the cells these people were suffering in.
Oh.
I recognized the furniture that he was at. That's Herman Miller furniture. I built thousands of cubicles so people can sit there and suffer during the .com craze, the Y2 craze, all of that. I seen the corporate structure and the misery, and then of course fell into it, not wanting to. It was like, okay, this is really bad. And then I fell into his film Extract, which went, to the warehousing side. But his style is unique in this. I mean, really, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, it isn't Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Seal, showing that kind of stylized pain, but it is. It does show that kind of pain. You know what I mean? It isn't Fellini's 8.5 stylized, but it kind of is in his own way. You see the horror of it all, and the way that it is photographed, overlit, so you can see everything sterile, so that it is just plain. Today, if that movie was made, they would have like glamorous, weird, shadowy lighting in the office buildings, and it's all muddy and murky. The apartments, which I have to mention, he lived in Morningwood Apartments. It's ridiculous. They would over stylize it, whereas this didn't need to be over stylized. It needed to be sterile, and it worked.
But it was perfect like that because I've lived in those apartments. I've lived in an apartment complex just like that, which was for young urban professionals.
With the
paper thin walls. I mean, you hear the doors slamming. I mean, yes, the observation is like a true comedian, and he wrote it down, and he was able to play it off. And it always amazes me how this movie wasn't a success until it went to video, and everybody knew what it was, and it was a hit. Great stuff.
Yeah, everybody found it all of a sudden. It was like, oh my God, I can relate to this, and it's like, well, what was the failure? And it was probably the studio didn't get it and probably didn't market it well. So.
Yeah,
that was it. That was it exactly.
Did it?
Because they have no self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't realize they were being made fun of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over to you, Steve. Now, I don't know what your work and life experience is. So, if you've got corporate experience and, but it seems to me that like my brother has been a teacher his whole life and he can relate to this, and I know that you've been a teacher, but I'm curious because I was like, one of the things my brother really relates to is everybody who lived through this point wanted to take a fax machine out and curb stomp it. They just wanted to curb stomp the shit out of one of those things, or a printer or something. So how did you relate to this movie, and what did you get out of it?
Well, I will say I've worked mostly in academia, but I have worked in places where I've worked in writing centers, and at times, Peter's experience as he's describing it to the two Bobs, there is a little bit of that. I'm like, yeah, that there is truth to that. There are people who have the same kind of reactions where it's just like, yeah, you're just, you know, all you want to do is just, not be harassed, by the people you work for and all of that. So there's definitely that, and I have a feeling that, like in any line of work, you're going to have some jobs that have that sort of reaction to it, or has that kind of feeling, where it's just like you just want to do what you want to do, and you don't want to, necessarily rock the boat or do anything crazy. So I kind of dig that. And the interesting thing, though, is they then subvert it with Peter, dealing with the hypnotist, and then after that he becomes Ferris Bueller for about 30 minutes. And it's just like, and then it becomes like, okay, he starts failing upwards, which is a total thing. Like, it's like, I don't give a crap. And he fails upwards while all these people that are working hard, end up getting fired and all of this sort of stuff that, people that are, in theory would be more qualified. And you begin to see like, how corporate culture really kind of works. I have done a little bit of corporate work as well. And from what I've seen, it definitely feels like that. And you start to see like, yeah, we'll bring in these consultants because we have no clue. And then, you have a boss who's completely clueless, one of 8, which I thought was hilarious. And this is why I'm saying I really do feel there's a lot of lived experience in this, and this is where I think Mike Judge's work really works, because he's laughing at things that have happened to people, and he manages to hit the emotional core of that reality and how people live in that. He is in touch with his audience in a way that a lot of Hollywood creators and writers are not, and that definitely shows. And on top of that, they're really good character arcs. Characters change and grow with the experiences, and there's a beginning, middle, and end to Peter's story and how he evolves and how he changes. And even minor characters like Milton, you definitely get the sense that this is a guy who's taken a lot of crap, and by the end of the movie, it's like, he hits his limit, and it's just like he just explodes, And they foreshadow it brilliantly too. It's like, I feel like setting the place on fire, and what ends up happening is it's the place on fire.
Yeah.
Not only that, I think one of the most brilliant things about this movie is that he doesn't stick to just corporate culture, because he got the Jennifer Aniston with her job and what she figures out. But he also presents people in Samir and Michael Bolton, who, after dealing with all the
having
bullshit,
to lie about a musician that he hates because he took his name. Yeah, he's the one who sucks. I just dug that.
But after dealing with all the BS at Initech, they decide to go right back into the corporate culture to another job that sucks just as bad.
It's harder to unwash your brain than it is to wash it.
Yeah, and that's another thing that spoke to me. It was like, that was me, until I couldn't do it anymore, which was a great thing. So, but that's the brilliant thing about Mike Judge, is that there are a lot of people that will just do that sludge for 40 years and die inside a little bit at a time. So,
Well, even when you look at Lawrence, the construction worker next door, and he's like, does anybody ever say you have a case of the Mondays? I believe you get your ass kicked,
Yeah.
It's just a case of the Mondays, am I right?
Yeah. And on the side of that, remember, what does Samir say? He's like, can you imagine, like, we'd still be doing this job 50 years later? And Samir's like, oh, man, talk about job security.
Right. He's drinking the Kool-Aid. He's done. He's finished.
And I don't want this to be a therapy session, but yeah, it's just like every part of this movie I could talk for hours about. So
my last job, we had a TPS report. Because it was a foreign country, they didn't understand that it was a big joke. It was a big joke. Everybody got it but them.
All right, we need to get to the cast of this movie. So there are a ton of cast members. So we are going to go around the horn one at a time and pick people to talk about, because if I try to do it in group, we could be here forever. So I got to try and manage the time as best I can. Because this is Jeff's movie, I'm going to go back to Jeff again, but then I'm going to go to Lance and Steve. We'll go around the horn like that. So Jeff, pick a guy to talk or a girl to talk about from the movie real quick. So
I got to go with my boy Gary Cole. That's
Okay.
the whole reason I wanted to pick this film. Not just the fact that it was a classic, but Lance so hit it on the head. Like, this guy is the hub of the wheel. All of this revolves around him. He really does drive Peter in this film, because it's not just the job, it's the guy he's got to work for. And Gary Cole is so ruthlessly ambivalent towards everybody else in his office. And this is such a wonderful, it's a brilliant straight man performance that is also subdued, but it's so right there. Like, when he's getting his birthday cake and he's, nothing
yeah.
phases him. He's just like, yeah, this is great. And but what a douche he is when he's got a Porsche, and he's got to have, it's like, people can see you got a Porsche, but he's got to get a vanity plate that says, like, my Porsche. Really? You've got the Porsche. You don't, my Porsche would be what somebody with a Winnebago would put that license plate on them to make themselves feel better about the car they were driving. But he's so douchey, he does that. And the constant cup of coffee and that droning speech pattern of his that just grates on your nerves. And it's so hyped up in the nightmare sequence when he's fake banging Jennifer Aniston's like, could you move just a little? Like, yeah, that's great, right there. I can see why this dude would why this guy would have nightmares about this guy. Like, it's a different sort of vibe, because I was in boot camp and I was afraid of these people, because you're supposed to be afraid of them. But one of my drill sergeants, I started having nightmares about their voice. You'd hear their voice coming down the hallway. It's this little 5 foot tall woman, but of course she's tough as nails because she's a drill sergeant, right? And you'd hear that, oh, 3rd platoon, and like your skin would just start crawling because she was the meanest one out of them all. Like, she had more to prove being a little tiny woman, right? And so she would get you. And we've all worked with people who annoy us for one reason or another. And this guy is just so dreadful because there's absolutely no recognition whatsoever about the effect he's having on anybody. And the only people he shows any real emotion around are the other executives. That's when he starts cracking a smile and he's making like they're looking over at Milton like, ha, 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 like they're making jokes at his expense. Like, so everybody else who isn't in that executive position, they're not on his level. And he shows us that in those scenes. And it's just great. It's not just the writing, it's Gary's performance there.
I think Bill Lumberg in this movie is the banality of evil. So
Yeah,
absolutely. It's weird because it's the banality of evil is a funny way of putting it, because he is kind of that guy. It's not evil to be evil, but what he does is rather painful to everybody around him who is not on that corporate level.
Yeah.
He sells it brilliantly. It's a wonderfully understated performance, and I could watch a separate movie just about this guy going through life and just make everybody else's life worse around him.
And the funny thing is on his profile, that the Bobs were reading. Did you see that he graduated from MIT?
No, I missed that.
It's like the layer of lumber is like, he's not an idiot.
Yeah.
But he's evil.
It's what it turns into, though. And I had a real quick share, and I'm going to go to Lance. I had a boss named Steve, and I don't know if he realized it or not, because this was after the movie came out, but he would always come to my cube and be like, yeah, I'm going to need you to work this weekend and load data. I'm like, and I would do the same thing. I'm like trying to get out of the office before he could find me, except I had a pager. So, oh, God. All right. Like I said, therapy. Lance, what about you?
I'm gonna go with Drew.
Okay.
the moment he hits the screen and says he's going to show the gal from logistics his O face,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that dude steals every scene that he's in. And I'm like, why wasn't this guy a superstar? Why isn't this guy a leading man in every comedy after this film? Because every time he was on screen, he's that dude that just takes it over the top to the next level in any situation. It doesn't matter if it's at the office or if it's at a party. He goes there and sells it. He has all the facial expressions, the hand gestures. He goes there. I mean, this dude is gold in this movie. I
Did you know
can't.
that the guy who was the other waiter at Chotchki's or whatever that place was called, was a writer and a location scout? I was like, this dude should have been in comedies, you know?
This dude, he's my second choice, because it's like these guys, they had a specific part to play. And once again, if you were to take one of those two guys out of this film, it wouldn't work. Everything would fall. These guys, minor players, needed to be in there. But Drew, he's my favorite character. His excitement, everything. Oh, you're dating her? Woo, woo. He just signed. I mean, was that in the script? You know, my O face, all that stuff was like, okay, this guy's great. He should have been a superstar. So that's my guy. I mean, we can go on with other characters, but him, he elevated this movie to a different level. That's all I'm going to say.
There really are no. Oh, go ahead.
That's part of the brilliance of this movie. Like, there's everybody who's in this film, from like, you know, the focal point of the film on down to these little bit players, they all just bring it. Like, every single one of them is memorable in some, like when our hero first gets to the office, and, you know, that woman's like, you know, like, so-and-so, like, please hold, please. That little tone she's got, like, that's stuck in your head forever now.
And she didn't go on to do anything either. So
even when they were doing the round table meetings, you know, where everybody was standing up, the stand-up corporate meetings, everybody stands up, don't sit down. You know, you've heard that one before. Everybody stands up, so you pay attention, and blah, blah, blah. And they're panning across the actors, and there's that one actor selling it by just nodding really hard. And there's always that ass kisser. There's always that ass kisser, no matter where you're at, that's just nodding and making it very visible that they think they understand. I was like, I hate that guy, but that actor right there sold it, and I'm glad it was in the cut. You know, I'm telling you, the details of this movie are it's mind-boggling.
Meanwhile, I'm in the corner nodding, doing this.
Stand-up meeting.
Oh man! All right, yeah, there are really no wasted parts in this movie. There are none at all. There's no wasted space. Steve, you got a person you want to talk about?
Yeah, a couple actually, but I'll first say
let's go with one. We're gonna go around the horn again. So
yeah, okay, we'll go with one. Then I was going to say first, like what Jeff was talking about with Gary Cole. Just kind of really sells the one scene where, you know, Peter just goes and parks his car in Cole's parking spot. The guy parks the Porsche in a handicap spot, and then he gets his car towed, and then the bumper gets called off by the tow truck, and it's like that was just a really great moment. But no, I was going to talk about Ron Livingston as Peter. Yeah, so the dude kind of stuff table here. And that is that, you know, this is a guy who really comes across as being a very everyman kind of character when you first see him. And, you know, he's meandering through life. You know, he doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know who he is. He has no clue. And he definitely sells this sense of morose cluelessness, you know, sleepwalking through life. And I was reminded a little bit of Tom Hanks in Joe vs. the Volcano, where we first meet him.
Right.
You know, he has a brain cloud, you know, and it's the same kind of transformation that he has later, except that here it's like when he wakes up into Ferris Bueller.
Right.
He just stops giving a crap, and he stopped giving a crap so much, and he hates this company so much, you know, that it's like, not only is he blowing them off, you know, he's coming up with schemes to defraud them and things like that, and he just doesn't care. And I love, like, you know, and I'm starting to see, wow, this is a criminal mastermind in the making, and it went from Joe versus the Volcano to Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it kind of felt like, and it could have gone there if it were more serious. But
Mhm.
at the same time, Livingston really plays the transformation really well, and it's very convincingly the same guy. But it's just that we start to see who he is under this, like what all this resentment that he has for this company has done to him, and the way that he plays that is just really, really convincing. And then at the same time, there's also a third character in a sense at the end where he kind of realized, okay, I went too far and I screwed up. So he's not Ferris Bueller, because Ferris Bueller would say that you never can go too far. This
Yeah.
guy kind of realizes that, okay, I went too far, and he actually starts to try to make amends. Even though he ends up being in a place, that's not as good as where he thought he was, by the end. So there's a definite character arc with him. And I kind of feel like Livingston made that convincing, and he made it all funny. So not only is he the everyman, he is basically, somebody who's capable of being the funny guy at times. Morose cluelessness. Yeah, I must be. Must I? But yeah, I think that Livingston absolutely sells his role, and because there's a lot of facets to it, you may not necessarily see it at first, but there are a lot of facets, and at the same time, it's the same character with a defined arc. And I absolutely think that they found the right guy to do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, there are several people that I would want to talk about, but we mentioned this in brief passing just a minute ago about there's no wasted characters. I didn't realize who this was when I first watched the movie, but I do now. I was a former crackhead who was trying to get his life straight, selling magazines.
Yeah,
Orlando Jones is fantastic. And then when you realize that this is all an act, and he's a former computer, software developer who's making more money doing magazines. And once again, Mike Judge is right on point here. I've met these people. I've seen these people. And it's an absolutely brilliant performance by Orlando Jones, because he pulls off, you really believe he's a crackhead. You see these people come up to you all the time. I'm trying to get my life straight and stay out of gangs. Will you buy my candy bar? It's like all of this shit.
He's got the memorized script in his head, like, yeah. I'm a drug dealer, but now I'm trying to get, like that whole thing that people do.
Yeah. And he ended up selling 40 Esquire magazines to Peter to keep him quiet. So the dude's a friggin' genius. But it's an incredible part. And it's so small. I mean, he's on screen for maybe 3 minutes total. But
the best, yeah.
But it adds so much to the movie, because it's like suddenly these guys just got rolled, and realizing that there is no future as a software developer, and still Samir and Michael Bolton go back to it at the end. So yes. You're like, it's friggin' fantastic. It's just I can't overstate how brilliant it is, and I had to point out that part because it's just an amazing small little role that Orlando brings it for. He was professional as hell. His comedic timing was perfect. He's deadpan the whole time, but it's absolutely hilarious and it's great. So I thought it was a fantastic part. So back to you, Jeff.
Let's see. I kind of like man, it's tough because I really want to talk about Milton.
Go for it.
But I also love his neighbor quite a bit.
Okay.
Who had first, I think I saw first in Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah.
Jethro, and we go from like the white collar to kind of like
Dietrich Bader.
Yeah. The middle sort of land where Jennifer Aniston is, but then we drop down into like total blue collar with his neighbor, and that guy, he's very content where he is, and you got to appreciate that. Like, he's a guy doing a simple guy doing a simple job. He's working off the sweat of his brow. He's very happy.
He's the master on the mountain for Peter. So.
Yeah, he's kind of the shaman. He's the kung fu.
When you ask him what he wants out of life, he's like, the only thing he can think of is like, two chicks. Yeah, I'd be happy with 2 And that's pretty cool. And everything in his life is so reduced down to just the simple needs of like food, shelter, pleasure, and whatever little entertainments he has outside of that, which is probably just more women. But he's really, in some ways, he's like he's like the dude. He's like the Big Lebowski, but not just a lazy cretin. He's actually a guy who's out there and he's doing something constructive, literally constructive. He works in construction, but he's not working a job he hates. As a matter of fact, the scenes where you actually get to see him working his job, it seems like he's having a pretty decent time. And he and his coworkers have an understanding and appreciation for what they're doing. Like, like if you say something dumb, somebody's going to punch you in the face. That's just the kind of crew I hang with. But that probably doesn't happen too often. They probably get along, have good work. I've worked laborious jobs like that. And, there's sort of a camaraderie that comes from doing physical labor. And he's totally in that zone. You work hard, then you get off work, and you take the weekend, you play hard. It's
the honesty though too, because I mean, the corporate world and the way that people are depicted, the fear, the underhandedness, the two-facedness. But then when Peter Gibbons is like, "Hey Lawrence, you want to come over?" and he's like, "Hell no, I don't want you fucking up my life." I mean,
that's a great line. That's a fucking awesome line.
Yeah, it is. It's way too complex for him. You're like, oh man, you're getting way out of your business. You should have just kind of figured things out on that level, and he's also genuinely a good buddy to have. He's always calling over like, hey, there's some titties on Channel 9. He's a real bro in that kind of sense. He just wants to have a good time with his buddies, have a beer, have a girl over every now and again, that sort of thing. And then, but he still, even hearing everything that Peter's gone through, he still sticks up for him. Like you can feel this admiration is like, I'm probably going to be going away for a little while. I was like, yeah, man, that sucks. But they both realize this is the right thing for him to do. And he still stands by him, even throwing out some funny advice. So like, watch out for your cornhole.
Well, he's also got that brutal honesty too. Like the one point where he's like, can you, they thought that my girlfriend's cheated on me. And he's like, I can see that. Like,
he so wants to tell him more, but there's that kind of bro code where it's I tell you all the details. I just want to tell you enough that you can figure it out yourself. Everybody else knows but you, man. Now, so he's a good buddy without overstepping. So he's such a likable character because of all these traits.
I will also say he is one of several people in this cast who are absolutely prolific professional actors / voice actors. He works constantly and he works on everything. Stephen Root is another one. He's been Batman.
He's been Batman.
He's been, just the list goes on. Just go look at his IMDb sometime.
Mm-hmm.
The guy has never taken any time off. He's working all the time, and his ability to do a whole host of things from kids shows to serious stuff is incredible. So really, really amazing. Lance, over to you.
I'm gonna go with the Chopsky's waiter. I mean, he's like a Lawrence. That dude steals every scene that he's in. And even when they're talking in the restaurant and he's in the background and he's just miming basically.
Todd, we got to kill him his name. Todd Duffy. There he is.
Todd Duffy. Yeah. This dude is nailing it. I mean, I'm looking in the background watching him over who's in the forward. Yeah, it's like, and he loves his job.
Quick little turkey hand gestures and things.
Yeah, he's got all the flair.
He's that friend you knew. He's that friend who aspired to be the assistant manager at McDonald's in high school. It's like
and achieved it, and is just going with it. So that's when you're like, okay, this is the right pick for this part. And when you look at it, as much as Jennifer Aniston's character hates him, you end up liking him because just even his last scene, get a room, you two, and then he flips them both off, in the parking lot. It's like he sells it every time.
It's so great because he doesn't even have the self-awareness to realize how much they hate him. He thinks he's funny and quirky, and they're enjoying it.
Which is like a different form of oblivion, like it fits in with Lumber. He loves what he's doing.
Not only that, he's Dietrich Bader, but on the opposite side. He's Dietrich Bader's character. So
it doesn't matter if it's construction. It doesn't matter. It's Drew. It's Chotsky's waiter. It's Lawrence. You see different working class structures, but they're that same kind of character. That's like, okay, I'm here and I can dig this, and I'm okay with it. I'll be loud and proud. So I mean, I think that's another a scene stealer all the way. And he is what he maybe has 2 minutes of screen time if we're even lucky.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Over to you, Steve.
I'm going to go with John McGinty as one of the Bobs.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Yeah, if you want to talk about a guy who is unlikable, I would say number 2 to Lundberg is this guy, and it's because McGinty's just so really good at playing these really bad characters. I mean, I was thinking of the Scrubs. Yeah, is his role in Scrubs. And he is kind of like that, but at the same time, he's a lot more corporate. You know, he's the way that he kind of looks. He definitely is part of that culture. And at first, you start to look at and think, well, maybe he's not that bad because he does get Peter right in his profile, kind of. You know, yeah, this is a guy who's not motivated. This is a guy who's definitely smart and could definitely, you know, be to run things in management if he really wants to. And we see this because he's able to run this little gang of his, you know, fairly effectively for a while. You know, so clearly he does have the chops to be a leader when he wants to be. So, but then you start realizing, okay, at the same time, it's like, yeah, but it's only because they see something in it for them, you know. And when they start looking at a lot of these other guys, it's like, oh yeah, this guy, you know, he's only there because of a clerical error. Nobody told him he was fired. Oh, we're not going to go and tell him. We're going to go fix the problem. We fixed the glitch, and this guy's not getting paid. And you're like, yeah, you're screwing this guy over. What an asshole. and you know, and it's the same thing with these other 2 guys who are clearly competent and clearly doing a good job, and they're good workers, but no, we're going to cut these guys. I mean, they just don't care. All they're thinking about is the bottom line. And it's like, wow, he's just a little bit, he's more of a callous kind of asshole, and all he you know, he's seeing is numbers. It's just so corporate, and McGinty plays that callousness perfectly, I think.
he does a great job, and we got to remember he goes back to Wall Street, where he was a Wall Street trader, and he played a terrible office.
He also played a douchebag sergeant in Platoon. He was an overly afraid
don't forget
husband and Identity. So
on Deadly Ground, you get to see Steven Seagal throw him into a helicopter blade. So that's good.
Yeah. The guy is supremely talented and is a chameleon. He can play any part. You know, he can play an evil bastard or a weakling or a corporate douchebag or, you know, everything. So he's a really great actor, but he's not a leading man, which shows.
Did you say Intensity already? Boy, I loved him in that.
No, I said he was in Identity though. He's the husband in Identity.
He has that villainous look. I think that's what serves him well, and that's why he plays all these douchebags.
Was that a miniseries? I think it was a TV movie miniseries they did where he did an adaptation of Dean Koontz's book Intensity, where he plays a serial killer. Man, he is a scary dude. Yeah. The guy, fantastic.
I'll tell you, one of the movies I was considering for next week was Identity, and he's in it. And his part in that movie is just a complete departure from what you see in other places. He's pathetic, and it's on purpose, you know. And I'm still considering it, so we'll see. Have you guys seen Identity?
Oh yeah,
I'm not.
I have not.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to go with the look into the future character here. The look into for Peter, Samir, and Michael Bolton, and that is Richard Reel's Tom Smokowski. He is what their future will be if they continue on with this path, to the point where it's considered lucky that he got in a car accident and destroyed his body because he gets to get out of this life. So, and he's been promoted into a job where he knows he does nothing. And there are those people in corporate structure where you get promoted into a job where you know you are on the line to get axed because you have no job. You don't do anything, So it's just absolutely, they call them system engineers, but I'm not going to bag on anybody.
No.
Yeah,
Right out.
And Tom Smikowski is brilliant in this because the paranoia and the fear for his job and
the paranoia.
It is right there bubbling on the surface at all times. He's like running around with the piece of paper. They're going to screw us. They're going to do this. And he's right. He's absolutely right. He's survived long enough to get to this point where he's looking over his shoulder all the time. And that really puts that line for Samir or whoever, Michael Bolton, where he goes, can you imagine if we're still doing this when we're 50 in focus? Because there it is right there. Yeah. Michael Jackson is giving you what happens. So
he's paranoid because he knows he's not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's that great scene where he's talking about what he actually does at the company, and he's kind of having to face that. And he's like, "I've got people skills, damn it!" I was like, "Clearly you don't. You're blowing it with these two guys. You got no people skills at all."
And you also know you're at an age. If you get axed, you might not get another job. You know, so and you're at a salary where you might not get another job, and it's like. I was telling my wife this just the other day. I was like, can you imagine if I was still working in corporate development, like software development now? What the hell would my life be like? She's like, oh, don't even go there. That's like, exactly. So, all right. Out there doing that, it's great. Enjoy it. Live it. So, all right. We're going to do one more round, and then we're going to wrap this up. So, Jeff.
Again, man, I want to talk about Milton, but I'm going to get on somebody else. I just adore Samir. Samir is whereas a lot of people keep it in, Samir is the exposed hostility of working at a job that you hate. Like watching this guy, like if anybody is going to come into the office with a gun one day, it might be Samir. I could be wrong. Maybe it's because he's actually expressing his anger, so he does let it out. It might be, Milton is the guy who didn't. Like, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. The Samir can, I'm going to change that. Samir will probably last because he is the guy who does let it out. He's not keeping it all down like Milton, and we see how Milton kind of has his meltdown. And the scary thing about Milton is, and that's an interesting thing about the script, is there are some pretty dark moments in here that you realize that, like, once Milton has gotten away with it, well, he will see a pattern of success here, and he's going to do it again.
But Samir will end up getting promoted to a technical lead that by the time he's 50 something just doesn't give a shit and will come to work whenever he wants. So that's what
pretty much. That's Samir's probably got a decently good outlook in that way, but I love the aggression and the energy that he brings to it, but at the same time, he's there every day, and he's very practical. While I need a job to exist. If I can have this job for 50 years, that'd be great for me. But just that bubbling cauldron of hate and all the cultural stuff that's going on. I was like, oh, what's wrong with you people? My name is very easy to pronounce. Sure, if I grew up over there saying names like that, I totally get that. But there's just his whole affect about things, like this contradiction between his willingness to do it and just that seething that he has all the time. And I find that very interesting psychologically, where you would think, like, when Peter has his, like, I don't give a shit kind of hypnosis anymore. It's like, no, I don't like the job. I don't think I'm going to do it. And I think that's where a lot of people go. But Samir really represents a whole bunch of people out there, because they do work in a type of job that they absolutely loathe, but they will work it every day because they are looking for the days like, well, I need the money, I need the security, I need the retirement, and maybe by the time I finally get there, maybe then I will finally relax and finally be happy. Oh. And it's joyous to see him get that moment where he actually gets to vent vent in a way that doesn't harm anybody else. But like, you know, of all the guys who attack the copy machine, he's the most vicious about it. You know, dropping those axe kicks on it, just wailing on it with a baseball bat, and like finally an outlet for all this anger. It must have been very cathartic for him.
I think.
But, yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think Samir represents something else, and Mike Judge hinted at it somewhere else with the Bobs, which was the influx of foreign labor, especially in tech, and also outsource. They talk about with the outsourcing there and outsourcing like somewhere Singapore or something.
Well, I also it's interesting about the layoffs that go on, and despite the fact that like the Mike and Samir work, they actually do work, but they hate their job. And I think this comes across, and this is why they're part of the layoffs. I don't think O-Face is going to get fired.
No.
He is so happy. He's probably so productive in his job. They're like, oh, this guy's doing a great job. We got to keep him. You know, like Kevin, you know, this guy's got 37 pieces of flair. You know, if we got to lay some people off, it's not going to be that guy. He's here for it. But these guys, you know, you can be really good at your job, but if you hate your job, it radiates out, and people are aware of it. And this is why he and Mike get fired, because they clearly hate what they're doing.
Right.
I think that Samir also represents the foreign worker who comes over here thinking they can achieve. It's kind of what they were talking about in Idiocracy too. They can achieve the American dream, and he realizes that the system will not only screw the American workers, it'll screw the new American workers too. So good luck, you know. So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Over to you, Lance.
Well, I like the way.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like the way Jennifer Aniston plays it once again. Pretty deadpan, you know. She's of course. Well, we need the female lead. Who's the female lead in the movie? And she comes along, but it isn't glamorous by any means. You know, you can tell that it isn't played as a supermodel. She's a working class gal, and you can tell she's doing her job just like Michael Bolton and Samir. And she hates it. She absolutely hates it. And then she has to put up with Mike Judge, her boss, about flair and attitude. And it's almost like she's probably very productive. She's probably getting the tips. She's probably making it happen, but she's getting hassled because she's just not playing the role. And she's the one that says most people don't like their jobs. But hey, guess what? Sometimes you just got to handle it. Sometimes you just got to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of that voice of reason that's not played, heavy, which I liked. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jennifer Aniston, I've come over the years to have a much greater appreciation of her acting ability as well. I think Friends kind of, I'm not that Friends was necessarily bad, but I think she got defined by it, and she has a much greater range and ability than that. So.
It proves it here. You know, even when she's questioning the criminal activity, it's like, you know, wait a minute, this is wrong. And how could I make you see that? Envy at a different job, like having a better uniform at a different restaurant. Is that really going to be an asset if you jump ship to another job? Just like Michael Bolton, Samir, they go back into the same situation. Jennifer Aniston goes back to the same situation, but she plays it straight. And I like how unglamorous it was. I thought that was a fun way to not stereotype your female lead. You know what? It didn't fall into a cliche, and that's what I liked.
I think it's funny that we can't refer to him just as Mike. We have to make sure we say the full name every time.
Yeah, Michael Bolton.
Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, yeah, that was actually where I was going to go. Was with Michael Bolton, because I gotta say, like, I mean, this is a guy who, you know, comes across as this nerdy guy who's, you know, just trying to do his job and, you know, try to get by doing the best job he can, and he puts the best job that he can do, and they don't appreciate him for it. But man, is he resentful? He is the angriest dude underneath all of this, and I think it shows most especially with the scene where they're beating the hell out of the printer, because I mean it's like he's beating on it even when Samir is like, yeah, I've had enough, you know. And here the other two guys are having to pull him back from the printer because he's going to smash what's left of it into atoms.
With his bare hand.
At the rate that he's going, he's got a lot of repressed rage. And I just think it's great. I mean, not to mention he's also can be very, very snarky. I love that fact that he absolutely hates that he's named after the singer and can't stand his music.
But he folds, he caves.
Yeah, and yeah, when he's with the Bobs, he's like, yeah, I've got to lie about that, because of that, and he does such an unconvincing job of that because it's like they ask him, yeah, what's your favorite song, and he can't come up with an answer because he hates all of them, and they can tell that. So it's like, yeah, the reason why, but it's also a contrast to Peter because Peter's like, I don't give a crap. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think because I don't care anymore, and he's not at that point. Bolton's not at that point yet. He's just saying whatever you have to say to try to keep his job, and it doesn't work because he's unauthentic and they can sense that. What is real is the anger and the sheer rage that he has towards the company, towards screwing him over, to the point where he's going to get involved in this risky scheme, to try to, pinch like a quarter of a penny, to try to make that money. And it's just, I mean, I just think that's very believable. He's a very believable character.
The virus, and if you notice when they were implementing the virus, it actually said virus. It was,
Yeah.
it was like...
I love the contrast of that is like, because he does come across as fake, and it would have been so easy, like, oh man, Michael Bolton, like, oh, it's so great. Like, they already fed you a song. Well, it's got to be When a Man Loves a Woman. It would have been so easy to just go with that and probably keep your job, but he can't really fake, liking Michael Bolton because he hates him so much, but he makes this really shoddy attempt. But then you see Peter, who is just completely his authentic self in the interview because he's had a little Jedi mind trick. And there's an important lesson there in like how the truth will literally set you free. He is the guy who gets promoted, and he clearly gets fired over it because like these two Michael Bolton Uber fans go like, "You want us to call you Mike? But you said you like Michael Bolton. I mean, that's your name." And so it's just Judge is so clever in like the subtext of all these things that he sets in his products. Yeah, it's just a very outstandingly sharp character, a sharp writer.
And Michael Bolton reminds me of this could be like the prequel to Falling Down. You know what I mean? He reminds me of that.
I was thinking
he
could be Milton in 50 years, but yeah, Falling Down fits him as well too.
I was thinking that's all I kept thinking about when I was watching it. It was like, this is the prequel to Falling Down. This is that character before he goes completely off the deep end in another 25 years. You know what I mean? Well played. I mean, once again, another great cast member. It's just like you can't go wrong. We could have thrown darts at all the pictures on a wall and hit something, and it would have been just fine.
Well, I'm going to wrap up with Milton. And did I black out there for a second?
Yeah, right. A second.
I'm gonna wrap up with Milton. So Stephen Root. This guy, like Dietrich Bader, like several others, is just prolific. He has done everything, and really, I'm going to talk about Stephen Root because he deserves to be talked about. Not a leading actor, a leading man, but a professional actor who is a chameleon. You could do anything. He has done. He was Bill Dauterive and Buck Strickland in King of the Hill. He's been on Phineas and Ferb. He's been in dramatic roles. He was in crazy, stupid movies like Dodgeball. He played a voice called Cock Mando in a Bill and Silent Bob reboot. I mean, the guy can do anything. And you see it in this. I mean, whatever you ask him to do, he'll figure out a way as a character actor, not only physically, but he can do it just with his voice as well, to become that person. If you've ever watched King of the Hill, there are no two characters more different in voice, appearance, and affect than Bill Dauterive and Buck Strickland. And he's voicing them both, So the guy is absolutely amazing. He's kind of like Billy West in that way, but even more prolific. And so, here he plays Milton, and he's completely in this part. Milton is afraid of his own shadow, or so you think. But inside, he is a seething, scheming, shunned, wounded employee who ends up, he stole a bunch of shit from the company he was working for, and they were too scared to get rid of him. And then he's the winner at the end. I mean, as much as Peter won because he's sort of in he's in a job that is better for him, Milton went off and is in the Caribbean or Mexico or wherever, but he's still the miserable bastard he was. You know,
he's still a sociopath. He's still a sociopath. Put strychnine in the guacamole. I mean, he's nuts.
Yeah.
That's the terrifying thing is like, the escalation from like, oh, well, I'll burn your place down to like, oh, well, I didn't actually kill anybody last time. So a little strychnine in the guac.
Yeah. And Stephen Root never breaks character once. There's never one time in this film where you don't think he's Milton. Everything that he does is on point and true to the character that he brought to life. And to the point where once you realize that he's got the seething ball of rage under him, and he's like, and the douchebag boss is coming and is like, yeah, we're gonna need you to move your desk down. Do it? Is this when he's gonna finally snap? It's absolutely
the worst
brilliant.
thing about it is, just to step back into Gary Cole's character for a moment, is the fact that he knows he loves that stapler. He bought his own stapler, and he just takes it from him out of pure spite, just because he can.
And that's that banality of evil. You're just like, oh my God. It's like, and nobody has told this guy he's fired. And then you realize he probably, and he's like making a stink about his paycheck. You're like, and you have to ask yourself, does he really know he's not fired? Or does he know? And he's just like, I'm sticking around while I can. I don't know. I don't know if he's a genius or just a bumbling sociopath. And you can't take your eyes off of him. And he's a side character, but kind of a main character at the same time. Who writes like that? It's brilliant, So,
yeah,
absolutely fantastic. All right, I have made up my mind. I'm pretty sure I talked about this movie before, but if Lance and Steve haven't watched it, I'm really curious to see what you think of it. And McGinty is awesome in it. We'll go back to what I was really gonna do. I want to do Identity. So
nice.
Okay.
And it's got a ton of people in it. There are so many people you have to choose from. Besides Cusack.
Yeah, I mean it's a great homage to Hitchcock's 10 Little Indians. So I think you guys will.
Actually, it's Agatha Christie. So
Agatha.
Okay. Yeah. So very cool. So we're going to do that movie next, Identity. And Macabre Mike will like that because it's a horror movie. So he'll be right in on that. I do want to thank you guys so much. This was a great recommendation. Great movie to talk about. It's different than it's interesting. We just go all these different places, So
we don't usually do comedy. So it was nice to have an opportunity to jump into one.
Yeah. And I would have loved to have done another one I was thinking about was Moving with Richard Pryor. But maybe we'll get back to that. Another great movie. So
I hope to get to an actor or actress who will allow me to pick Any Which Way But Loose at some point.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I haven't seen Identity yet, but now it's like, well, how do you plot to kind of get to another movie that you think we should discuss? But then sometimes it's like, whatever, go to Office Space. That's just fine. Don't talk about Clint Eastwood or anybody else. Office Space was like, Gary Cole. He's in. I mean, that's a jumping point. In the Line of Fire was a big jumping point.
And I'll be interested to see what you guys think of McGinty's character in this one because it's completely different. I
haven't watched this since it first came out in theaters, so I'm looking forward to reviewing it again. It's been a minute.
Yeah. So it's a good thing. It's a good movie. I hope you guys like it. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for the movie and thank you for being here.
Hey, pleasure as always.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, for all your insight. Thank you for being here on this afternoon.
Yeah, no problem. I will say, I'm not used to doing a whole lot of comedy discussion. And really a lot of it is just because a lot of the more recent comedies just don't really do anything for me. But when there is a comedy that hits as well as this one does, it definitely merits discussion. And you get to see a lot of really good actors in an ensemble. And that's really what this feels like. Like the whole is better than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's Mike Judge. I mean, he's always been great like that. So it's good to finally experience this one.
Don't worry, we're going to get you to a musical eventually too. So
No, I'll take a
Thank you
week off for that.
I
Thank
got
you so
one that I
much.
think will work. I actually have one that I think you'll really, really, really like.
Repo the
music
We're gonna have to- We're going to have to go tie him down to make him watch it, though. So thank you so much, Lance, for being here.
Hey, thanks a lot. This is a good one. I mean, I don't think we fanboyed all over it. We just told it like it was. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So thank you so much, everyone out there, for watching. Please make sure you click a like and subscribe on our video. It helps us quite a bit. Check out all the other videos we have on the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel. Come check out the Comic Crusaders websites. We've got written reviews on there. We've got features from all sorts of different people. We got whatever it is you're looking for, you can find it. Also, I will try and be better about putting down in the description links for all of our various projects, because besides doing this for all of you, all of us have got our own work that we're doing, and we'd love for you to come check that out as well. So once again, thank you to all of you. Make sure you keep that popcorn warm, get a snuggy chair, and watch some cinema this weekend and enjoy yourselves. Everybody, bye-bye.
See ya.